Recording. And our entire audience just heard me say recording. Well, folks, welcome back to Real Management Talk with LJ and Jocelyn. You never know what you're going to get when we come online, because quite honestly, we give you our raw footage and video right now. You know, that's just the way we roll. So.
Bloopers are all about authenticity. So we're going to keep it real.
Yeah,
on Real Management Talk with LJ and Jocelyn.
We do. So this is where we're at. So what are we talking about today?
So I figured today, you know, if you're in the US, everything is about the presidential election. So it's all about civic participation. It's all about getting out the vote. So I wanted us to talk a little bit about civic participation in the context of leadership. Okay. You know, let's talk about it. What do we expect from our leaders, whether it be in nonprofit organizations or for-profit businesses? What do we expect from our leaders as it relates to civic participation?
You know, I think that I've thought about it quite a bit, and I think that there's a couple of things. One is that we expect our leaders to set an example and to show up, and sometimes that is to volunteer. Sometimes it's taking on a position, maybe a second position to help a company. Maybe it's paid, maybe it's volunteer, but I think that there's a couple of things, though, that sometimes we put so much pressure on leaders to do that we don't understand why when they don't do something that we think we should do. So let's take the nonprofit world, for instance. There's a lot of pressure in the nonprofit world that if you're the ED or you're the development director in particular, that you should also be serving on boards and actively fundraising and stuff for other nonprofit boards. Well, the problem with that is that your primary responsibility is your own business, your own nonprofit. And so most nonprofits, if another nonprofit has anything that's similar to it, you know, doesn't really encourage you to go out and sit on that particular board. Now they encourage you to volunteer. And so maybe you're showing up, maybe you and your family go, say, do a stint at, say, the food bank, or maybe you go with your church and you help clean up something on the weekend, or maybe you even have leadership volunteer roles within your church, but it's not necessarily and that same thing. But to me, in all the years that I've worked with nonprofits, there seems to be this expectation that especially nonprofit staff, we're not talking about board members right now, that's a different piece, but that they should also go volunteer and help raise money and everything for all the rest of these nonprofits out there. And I think that puts incredible stress, because it just, you know, it's like any business. It's kind of like if I was showing up working for your business, volunteering, but I have my business and you want me to put your business first. In fact, you know, I just actually said that to a client on something that we were all going to together, and they were like, well, you're gonna rep my business. And I said, no, I'm there to rep my business, right? I mean, it's the same thing, but I do think that our leaders from civic participation, though, you know, they should be out there just, say, voting, you know, and encouraging their teams and everything to vote. But they should be participating within the civic discourse. So however they feel comfortable, and I'm going to say that quite honestly, because there are people who don't feel comfortable. I'm comfortable walking into a city or a county board meeting or whatever, because I did that for 25 years. But some people are not comfortable going to those types of meetings. Sometimes they just want to watch online. Sometimes they just want to, you know, read things and like that, but at least having the discussions and or showing up in groups and participating in those types of discussions. And I think that there's all different ways that that people do it. You know, that's what I'm
I
thinking.
agree 100%. I mean, I think that you reminded me actually of one of my favorite nonprofits that I ever worked for, ever had the pleasure, I should say, to work for. And, the nonprofit it was based in DC, Washington, D.C., and the work that the organization did just spanned everything. It was about water, water protection, conservation. It was about, reproductive justice and healthcare, and it just kind of spanned all kind of different issues. Religion. It was talking about church and strengthening the church. With more membership, there was just a lot going on. And so it was really, I think at the organization it would be easy if we weren't if we got larger. We were very small, but it would be easy to get lost in all of the different policy positions that we had taken. And I think what was so powerful about that experience is, to your point, we had leadership in place that had exceptional backgrounds. They were not of the same political party, and they still were able to sort of exist, and I would even say survive. They thrived in their difference. They were able to attract all sorts of people who ordinarily probably wouldn't even know, anything about the person that they were sitting next to. They were able to attract those people, make them all feel heard, and make them feel powerful. When we went down to Capitol Hill, we would go to Capitol Hill at least 3 times a week and just talk with our legislators about different policy positions that we had taken. And we were trying to, I wouldn't use the word lobby. That's not exactly what we were there for. We were more so a loose group of young folks who were just passionate about different policies that we would, go and discuss with everyone. We discussed it with elected officials. We discussed it with young other students at University of DC and, University of Maryland. So we just, we were more about advocacy work and outreach than we were necessarily about the lobbying aspect. But I think it was such a powerful experience because we had leadership in place that really valued all of us doing our part. And, they didn't care if we grew up, left leaning, right leaning, moderate. They didn't care anything about that. They only cared about us being civically engaged and getting educated on things, doing the research, getting other people, getting our friends and family involved. If they, believe like we did, that's what it was about. Mm-hmm. And I think because our leadership really impressed that importance of being civically engaged on us, I think that's why we were able to have such a resonant experience mm-hmm. with that organization. No matter where we, what we thought of the world and how we saw the world, we were all able to walk away from that saying that was probably the best experience that we ever had working for an organization. So I think that you're right. I think that, that's what it takes is for leadership to really just kind of, to your point, be the example of what it means to be civically engaged and participate. And you already know what I'm going to say. Voting is a daily thing. It's not you don't just vote every once in a while. You vote every day, and you vote with your dollars, every day with your dollars, with your money, with your time, the way you invest your time, who you invest your time with, how you invest that time and energy. All that is voting. It's a public expression of what you agree with. Right. That's how simple it is. And so when you think about civic participation, I would hope that we could impress upon people more so than ever now that, we shouldn't have surprises when it comes to our elections and their results. There should be no surprises. If there are surprises, it means that you're not aware of your power.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, no, I agree with you. And I think part of the problem is, and if you're listening from overseas to the podcast, part of the problem, honestly, in my opinion, with our American experience here, is that quite honestly, most most people have been asleep at the wheel for a good 50 years. They've just kind of, they've let, especially when we want to talk Congress, but it's true in most of the state legislatures, in most of the city councils that don't have limits, the counties that don't have limits, all of that. And notice that I'm not talking about the head guy either, not the executive, but the legislatures. And, there are literally people in Congress that have been in Congress for as long as I've been alive. And I won't disclose exactly how old I am. LJ knows that, but not. But having said that, the thing is the year that I was born, there's like 3 people who are in Congress that have been in Congress all of this time. And the reason that happens is people just literally stop voting. And, I know that you've read it, I've read it now. We both know that some of our media, it's a little hard to, tell who's some days telling the truth and who's not spinning stuff away and all this other craziness that's going on with that. But having said that, the numbers are up. I think I read this morning that like as of this week, and early voting closed like yesterday in Texas, I think. 80,
I think it's today, yeah.
Or maybe it's today, but as of yesterday, 88% of the number of people who voted in all of 2016 had already voted. And we're seeing these numbers across the country because, for better or for worse, no matter who agrees with whom over the last 4 years, and even though we definitely are disagreeing at the immediate moment on all kinds of fronts, it's woken something, I think. I think it finally put something in the consciousness of everybody that, we have an individual. It's not just our leaders. The first person we actually have to lead is us. Before I can lead anybody else, whether it's in my business, in my church, in my neighborhood, in my whatever. And leadership really is defined as influence. Now, you can influence good and you can influence bad, and that's a whole different thing. But before I can do that, I have to lead myself. So if I'm not out there voting, I don't have to agree with which way you vote. You vote, you don't have to agree with which way I vote. But if we're not involving ourselves in that social discord, the problem is we end up with exactly where we are right now. Because a lot of this, all across the country, both federal, state legislature, all of them, is because we've had people there in those positions for 10, 20, well, in some cases, 50 plus years. And that's just insanity. Especially at our federal level, it wasn't designed to be that way. And so we've raised this kind of, I said this to one of my UK clients the other night because they were weighing in on our politics, which is kind of making parliaments over there, in the same way. But and I love learning how other people see us. But I said to him, I said, yeah, the problem is that the one thing that the founders were actually trying to get away from, which was raising, not really having this kind of parliamentary type thing and this kind of lords and ladies class, as you'd put it over there. Well, we've managed to do that by not voting and not turning over our electorates every one. Right? And as a leader, I think that it's important for me to say, hey, look, I went and voted. But I also think that, well, I've always encouraged, my teams, whether I was running my own, as I do now, or, I was running teams for other people or whatever, to go vote, to do their civic duty as I was raised. But at the same time, if somebody doesn't want to do it, I'm okay with that. I do think that it's personal choice, but when they don't do it and they come back to me and they're complaining about the outcome, I literally look at them and go, you don't have any right to complain for the next however many years it is till that particular election, because you have the responsibility for participating. And people don't think that their votes count. Well, they count big time. If the 2016 election didn't teach us anything, a lot of races, it wasn't just the presidential race and like that, despite what everybody thinks, there were a lot of races that were determined in 2016 by only a small margin of votes. In one case, it was 3 votes. So your vote does count. But I'm also hoping, LJ, that whoever listens to this, quite honestly, no matter what the outcome of our election is here, because it's coming up pretty soon, that they return to the roots of you accept whatever the majority voted. You don't have to like it, but you just accept it. At least that's the way I'm raised.
No, that's absolutely right. That's what it's supposed to be about, is, living in a democratic republic. That's what it's supposed to look like, is, if the majority rules, then what that means for most of us is that we just need to, if we're going to organize to try to, have someone else instated, that's one thing, but we still respect the office, and we still want to make sure that we uphold democratic principles. Which is to, like you're saying, respect the decision that the majority of us have made. And I think that's, part of the conversation that we were having with with leaders of these nonprofit organizations and these for-profit businesses. The reason why we put the impetus on them to be the example, to lead and to use their platform within their organizations as leaders, to inspire, their staff and others who might be watching them to get engaged civically, is because we want folks to understand that democracy is not a spectator sport. And, part of being a part of a democratic organized anything, whether it be the businesses that you're leading, the charitable entities, whatever they are, democracy impresses upon all of us to have a voice, to stay informed, to get informed and stay informed. You not participating, and you already know what I'm going to say. A lot of folks end up not participating because they don't feel like they know enough to participate. And, newsflash, folks, you're going to feel that all the time. But that is not supposed to be the thing that prevents you from engaging and participating. I mean, prime example, for me, when I went and voted early here in Texas, I made sure that I printed off the sample ballot. A lot of this information is going to be available to you already. You should not be going and voting without knowing already what you're voting for. So that's part of the process of being civically engaged and participating, is go in and seek the information. Folks will tell you that we've got more computing power in these smartphones than what we had when we sent folks to the moon. So we really, truly should not have any excuses as it relates to getting involved and staying involved and getting informed and staying informed. So I think, again, the point is that if you're in leadership for nonprofits, or you're in leadership for business, a for-profit business, you've got to make sure that people can rely upon you to lead them in a direction that is not going to be ruinous, or set them up for any type of devastation or harm. That is our job as leaders.
Exactly. And I do think that that's our job as leaders. And I know that there's probably people who aren't going to agree with this. You may not agree with this statement either, because I'm not sure you and I have ever had this conversation. But, one of the things, though, that nonprofit leaders often need to keep in mind, though, is, especially if they're a charitable organization, is they can only do so much upfront advocacy on behalf of the organization. So So you do sometimes, especially in the nonprofit world, you have to draw a line sometimes between what you think and what you want to advocate for on the political spectrum and your private life. And a lot of, especially this year, I've seen a lot of nonprofit leaders forget that, not forgive it, but forget that. And all over the country, like I've read story after story after story where the nonprofit itself and those boards are forgetting that, and they're coming out against something, or they're jumping on something, or they're starting to really outright advocate or lobby for something that they actually can't do under the C3 status. And so it's a really fine line. And I know that we're all human and we want to, you know, advocate, but you have to watch for it, especially if you're a nonprofit leader, whether you're a board member or you're not, because you can greatly impact your organization. And quite honestly, the IRS actually doesn't have a problem with you doing that. They just say you're now a for-profit company. That's the only thing, you know. So they're like, you can go do it all you want, but the conditions of having this is this. So, you know,
right.
That's why you see associations form. This is why you see nonprofits belong to associations, and it's that association that then goes and advocates on behalf of those groups. And I think that that's the really important thing to, you know, keep in mind. It's not always, you're not always leading though when you step out, and you're actively engaging, or you could actually be doing some harm. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that, you know, it's, if you're a nonprofit leader, you really have to sit back and think, is this my personal opinion? Because if it is, I can go do what I want. But, or am I using my organization as the pulpit? Because that can create bad things. So
that's true. And I know we don't want to beleaguer this, but I think you just made a huge point. And I just had this conversation with somebody like 2 days ago. It's not, you know, even if I agree with you, that's not the point. The point is that you have to be cognizant of what of what type of what type of entity you've organized and what type of entity you're actually leading. And if you're supposed to be a, you know, 501c3 charitable organization, you're not supposed to be organized for private interest. And so a lot of times you have to be thinking progressively and forward about, am I inclusive? I think that's always the bottom line question is this inclusive? And I think recently too, with us just being so polarized now, you know, sometimes it just helps for us to not close doors. I think a lot of us have just been like, you know what, I'm fed up. I'm willing to close this door. I'm not willing to have a compromise. I'm not willing to have a conversation. And as we, you know, of course, we understand that. We understand the frustration, the pain associated with those feelings and those decisions. But ultimately, when you are in a position of power and leadership, you have a job to do for the public. And the public cannot afford to be polarized. The public cannot afford to be alienated or made invisible because someone doesn't believe the way that we do.
Right.
And that's the bottom line.
Sorry. And bloopers happen. The big giant monitor on it was blinding me.
We got a couple of those today. Congratulations, guys.
Well, but you're exactly right about that. And I think that's the thing we forget. I mean, I, like you, have run various different types of nonprofits, and there has definitely been ones that I've run that, you know, hey, I can go lobby, I can go advocate, I can, because that's the code that it's under. And so, you know, but with your teams, you do need to step up and lead. You should be the example. You should be, I mean, everybody, guys, whether you're listening to this, you know, as a nonprofit leader, you're listening to it. As a business owner, you're just somebody who finds us engaging and has decided you're listening to us here or someplace else around the world. You know, it's very important that we take responsibility for our lives. And I'm going to say this, despite whatever government we're living under, we still have, yeah, we need to function with whatever that is. And like LJ and I know, we know where this podcast is spread around the world. Thank you, analytics and all that. So we know where people are listening from. And, but having said that, you do have to function within whatever society has been created, whatever that government's created. But you can still take responsibility for yourself, for leading yourself, and then helping spread that to your family, and then, you know, from there, and your fellow human being, and etc. And I think that's the thing everybody has to keep in mind. When I define civic engagement, I don't just define civic engagement as, hey, you showed up at a city council meeting, or hey, you called your senator at the state level, or you wrote a letter to Congress, or you went and, you know, trolled the holes at Congress. I don't just count it as that. Civic engagement means a lot of different things. And a lot of it, a lot of times, is giving back and helping your fellow human. And that can be in, you know, so many different ways that we can go in. And, you know, one time, my husband and I don't know if this person will listen to this, so hopefully they don't mind me telling this story, but having said that, there was a young man who I worked with, and he had decided to move his family back to his home state, and his wife was pregnant. And he called me the morning that they were supposed to actually be leaving town. They were supposed to be out of the apartment. They were supposed to be out. Well, right in the middle of them moving, and it was their very last day, and they had to get out of the apartment. His wife had gone into labor and literally delivered their son in the apartment. And they had like 6 hours to get out. And they couldn't leave town because she had just given birth. They had no place to go. So he called me, and I didn't even check with Jay. I just literally went, okay, here's our address. This is where you're coming for the next 2 weeks. We have food for you. We have changing table. You guys can have the run of the house because we're not there during the day. Anything in the kitchen. This is where you're coming. Because you can't take that new baby. Well, you could take the new baby to a hotel, but that's not really an option because I knew where they were at. And, you know, so literally they showed up on our doorstep at about 12:30 before the baby was even 24 hours old. And their son is, I think he just turned 9. I want to say he just turned 9-ish. So, you know, sometimes that's an example of just like, you do whatever, you know, you help people out. So that is, in my mind, that's a form of civic engagement. But we use the word civic, and most of us associate it with some type of government or some type of advocacy or some type of something that has to do very public, but a lot of times it's not public. Helping. And I didn't tell that story to toot my own horn. I more told it to give the example of, you know, this is just things that you do. But that is something that people don't know about my husband and I. And, you know, we've done other things that I won't share. But, you know, the thing is that, and I know if the other person actually, they would never mind me sharing this story. So I know that they're good with it. But the thing about it is, you need to look in your life too and look back at those moments and maybe where you have helped somebody, and when you feel like you aren't leading, where you're not helping somebody, where you're not, you know, Um, but I saw what Jay and I both saw what that did for that very young family. First baby. I mean, all this stuff going on. Baby comes early. What do? And what it did for them. And we've gotten to see over time, as we've stayed in touch with them, like how their lives have expanded, how they've gone on to help others. And sometimes that's all it takes. It's really all it takes.
One act of kindness is contagious.
You can do this in your organizations. You can do this, you can do all of that. Someday we'll talk more about my stories on that. But anyways.
I love to hear these.
Yeah, well, I'm publicly, I'm still getting used to talking about certain things publicly because I feel like it's, I don't know. I feel like it's too much porn, and I'm not really trying to do that as much as I'm trying to share an example of something that, that's my own bad, LJ. I just have to start getting used to being in the public in this way.
Well, look forward for season 2, guys. Look forward to Jocelyn and I crying a bit more during our episodes as we travel back down memory lane.
We will. I'm sure that there's going to be some more as we go. And, yeah, but LJ is wearing the home state shirt today, or hoodie today. Woohoo!
Yes, Virginia Commonwealth University.
Yeah, I'm telling you, you're coming back to Virginia. You just don't know it yet.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. Yeah.
Guys, I think we've had a really great time today. When we originally started these, we thought they'd be short, but as you can tell, we like to talk. So.
And you like to listen.
Yes. We so much. This is. Wow, we've done a lot of episodes so far this year, and we thank everybody who started with us from the very first episode and has continued to listen, and for those of you who are listening now, and we quite honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we're very thankful for your support, and we do honestly hope that you will stick with us as we improve, because as we don't always remind every episode, but we started this as a lark, really. Mainly because we were having conversations and we thought, well, why not do it this way? This seemed like a good idea. So we started, but you're learning a lot. We're learning a lot about the tech. We're learning a lot about cameras. We're learning a lot about the audio. COVID obviously has made it a little, we were hoping that by this point we would have been able to be in the same studio, but that obviously didn't happen. And well, now we're going to have to travel quite a bit to get in the same studio. So we may do it one of these some point during season 2. It might actually happen. But we're towards the end of the first season here, and we're gonna be wrapping things up for 2020. And then, of course, we'll let you guys all know about the upcoming season. But yeah. Let's say, LJ, we're almost done with our TV season. Not in a bad. Just
fantastic.
We set a goal. We said we want 20 episodes for the first season.
I feel just as accomplished as Kelsey Grammer did when he finished the first season of Frasier.
Exactly.
I love Frasier.
Yeah, me too. That's probably a whole nother story. We should have a talk about TV shows. Anyway, guys, another episode. We're going to wrap this one up. Thank you so much again for joining us. Remember, you can hear us on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. You can watch us on YouTube. If you'd like to sponsor us, hey, drop us a line at guy at realmanagementtalk.com, and we'll try to follow up with you on that. Please send email there. We did get a message on our social media asking somebody saying, hey, we want to talk to you about this. Please reach back out to us. The problem with the social media is we try to check it as much as we can, but really it's going to be a lot faster if you send us all the information that you want us to look at and consider. Because we do this podcast for you, but and for ourselves, it's probably more for ourselves, our audience too. Yes. So there we go. Let's be honest about it. We started it for us. So there we go.
It's true.
Right. Well, we did. But we, we also, Tacit Growth Strategies, LJ runs full-time. I have a couple of companies that I run full-time. So, we just need people to reach us the fastest way possible. And that would be the fastest way possible. But thank you guys again for your support. And we look forward to talking to you on the next show. Bye.
Bye.